We'll get started. First off, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kevin Locke. Happy to be here with you today. Hope everybody's enjoying everything so far, and I hope the barbecue hasn't settled in too much, so that
Too late for that.
I can keep you all with me. I'm going to be talking to you about the customer experience and customer service today. And my background, just so you know, I worked for a major retailer called Target Corporation for about 15 years. I've worked for Advent Health, and I've also worked for a virtual online school provider, Florida Virtual School, which some of you may or may not have heard of. So I'm one of those individuals that has had a varied career in the past. I've done a little bit of everything over my time, and have gotten to experience a lot, both good and bad, in a bunch of different situations. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what I've learned over the course of those years, and hopefully you'll find that helpful. So I want to start with a little video that just is an expression of a customer experience. All right, so that's a obviously.
I've been to that hotel before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Stayed there many times, right? Okay, so that's kind of the extreme example, but has anybody ever had that type of experience where there was no room for you in the situation and there was a script maybe, and it was just repeated over and over again, no matter how much you tried not for that, for that not to happen? So one of the things that I think has happened with customer service and experience, the word serve is in it, but I think serve has been lost. One of the things I think that has happened most recently, when you get into those types of situations where someone is just telling you what they've been told to tell you, it's becoming customer rationalization, right? They're rationalizing why they can or cannot do something for you. So does anybody have an experience of customer service, a good experience that you would like to share, something where it was just stellar? Sure.
Wednesday night, we took a church group. It was our summer fun night, and it was somebody I had met at the chamber, and they work down at Icon Park, and it's this, escape room. So I really didn't know what to expect, and it was $20 a person. We charged everybody here $15, because again, we didn't know what we were getting into. So we're there. We're supposed to have 25 minutes, and we didn't get through all the rooms. But it's a guy's like, "Oh, I got extra cards here," so we gave all of our teams an extra card. So we all got to do all of the rooms. So doubled our time. So there was +1.
There you go.
So then we're getting ready to leave. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this was so much fun. It was great. Once we finally got the hang of it, it was awesome." He goes, "Oh wait, you get ice cream with this." I'm like, "What? I didn't know that." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I got it here on my notes." So we each got a frozen lemonade. And then he's like, "Okay," and then we're eating the ice cream outside, or the frozen lemonade outside, and then they come out with gift bags. Like every time I turned around, they were adding something. So we got gift bags that had like a buy one, get one free coupon for a drink, but like a stuffed Thai baby of some kind that all the kids were excited about. So then I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that you guys have just gone above and beyond." "Well wait, my boss has given me the okay, we can give you a $25 gift card to go play in our arcade." I'm like, "We only paid $20 to go." And so, I was just floored, and of course people were like, "How do we give them a review? This was amazing." And then the next morning when I got into work, she had said, "I hope, it was such a pleasure to host you all. We hope it was great. We want to be the #1 destination at Icon Park." And I was like, you got our vote. So, I was floored, because they went beyond 3 different times.
Right. So it's a +1, a +2, a +3, right? So most importantly, how did you feel?
You feel valued.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something I think that's has become a lost art, is the allowing someone to feel valued, right? And obviously the person you were working with in that instance, the person that was providing the service, there was some type of value to them in what they were doing that they had learned from their organization. And again, that's a huge disconnect that is often out there. So that's a really good example, and I appreciate you sharing that. So kind of remember those points of what she talked through, because they'll come up a little bit later as we talk. Has anybody had a bad customer experience? And just pick one. You don't have to tell me all of them.
We have a list.
I was at
Yeah.
this foot doctor the other day, and totally kidding.
Is that our practice?
But does anybody have an experience they'd like to share? Something that has not gone right lately?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So my family and I, we took a vacation a few weeks ago. We decided to fly on my favorite airline, Delta. Not mentioning any names, not a sponsor. All the way to Hawaii, right? Through a series of unfortunate events, we made it to Hawaii. Our luggage did not. Okay. Specifically, my oldest daughter's suitcase was damaged when it got there. The handle was ripped off of it and whatever else, but it was like 2 days late. So got it, went to go in, and of course, when we went to come home and check back in, the person was like, "Hey, you should file a claim." So we filed a claim. Now it's been 3 weeks. Finally heard back from them this week, and they said, we're not gonna do anything for you. I'm like, well, why not? You guys clearly broke. Well, we have the form that says it was busted. I'm like, yeah, that's because you busted it on the way to Hawaii, and on our way back we had to say, like, well, we're still not going to do it because we didn't file the claim within 24 hours. I'm like, now I've been a platinum member for like 19 years, and I'm like, really? I said, because I waited until I got back from vacation to file my claim, you're not going to do anything for me and help me get a new suitcase for my daughter. Nope, sorry.
And how did that make you feel?
That was very disappointing. Very disappointing.
And frustrating.
Did they give him passes to the Stargazer Lounge?
Yeah, exactly.
Did not get Stargazer Lounge passes.
Right,
So.
right. So again, those are experiences, and they last. That's the thing. Be it a good experience or a bad experience, those last over time, and it's an accumulation of those experiences that build your perception around an organization or a group or an entity. So, good customer service really starts with providing a service that's repeatable and that is a good service no matter where you go, so that there's consistency in it. And those are, that's the easy part of it. Well, sure, you want a good customer experience, you want good customer service, you want the people that are front-facing to be engaging with people, you want them to be, and this is a lost word, empathetic, rather than just providing rules around what's been established. And you want to make sure that those things occur, and that's kind of easy customer service. I think what has changed in our world probably happened as we were kind of going into COVID and as we came out of COVID, to be quite honest, because we were thrust into a very different environment. A lot of what we did was through online or telephones. We weren't going places. People still aren't going places. So it's changed the concept of what customer service looks like and how it's provided. And I think that there's more levels of frustration that can be associated with the faceless person that you're talking to on another end of a line, where you're maybe hitting button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, versus actually talking with someone and being face to face and having an experience. So there's a few things that have happened that we'll talk about in just a second. But there's a clinical definition of customer service, which is the first one, and I'm not going to read that to you. But basically, it's just the interaction with someone that you're serving. The second one is from probably the person who's receiving the service. If I get what I want, I'm happy. If I don't get what I want, I'm unhappy, right? Well, somewhere between those two things is the reality of what customer service and customer experience is. Okay. So something that's changed in the marketplace recently too, and when I talk about customer service and customer experience, I look at it from a very broad base. The customer experience involves not only the interaction with somebody on a phone or face to face, when you walk into an environment, when you have a phone conversation, when you look at a product, the selling tactics associated with all that, that's all an experience, and that's all related to you as a customer. So one of the phenomenons that has happened recently is the, what I will say is the pressure sell. I don't know about you all, but when Publix has something BOGO, it's like, okay, well, I can only buy that when it's BOGO.
Right.
We can't get frozen vegetables until Bird's Eye goes BOGO and then hit it hard because they're all going fast out the door, right? So we have limited quantity, final sale, price drop, 1 day only. The guy's standing at your door making a deal. Maybe you're getting a root. Well, today I can do it for, but the second I walk off of this doorstep, you get nothing. So those are all nice short-term strategies for business to use around selling and service and what it looks like. And it sounds like they're giving you something wonderful. But at the end of the day, I tell you, all it causes for me is stress. It's a stressful sell, and it's a stressful engagement for the customer or the client. And I think it's summed up really well. It's the promise of bounty or the threat of punishment based on what's happening. And I think that's one of those items that you need to be aware of if you're running an organization or a business or you're engaging with customers, is it's not really a good thing to put someone into a pressure cooker situation. It probably means that you're cooking the books in the wrong way. Okay. So that's something that I think everyone should be aware of as you kind of move through the journey with me. This is the other one that I was in retail for 15 years. There is no such thing as free shipping, period. You are paying for shipping no matter what you're paying for shipping. So I think, again, this is another tactic, another way that the industry has grown to make you believe you're getting something for nothing, but again, you're not. And I always just have to talk about this a little bit because people get so excited when and I'm like, not really free. And $90, and then you get free shipping, $75. It's also arbitrary. So it's just to be aware of those type of things that as a business owner or someone who engages a business or engages with customers, realize what you're putting people through when you engage in these type of tactics. It's not an enjoyable experience. It might be pressure, and it might also just set them off in a different direction. It's not what you want at the end of the day. It'll win a small battle, but it won't win the war. All right. This is the other ones that have creeped up that I think we all have to be aware of. So call centers, self-service websites, chatbots. I say find a phone number if you're lucky, look on a website, try to figure out which one you're supposed to call that number, be redirected to maybe another number. Talk to a human if you're lucky, and then select option 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1,000,000, and then probably start over and get hung up on. Okay. I think one of the other things to be aware of as an entity who does business, and we suffer the same slings and arrows of thinking that's the right thing to do just because everybody else is doing it. Chatbots are wonderful, but they're limited by what the knowledge base is around them. So those I think are slowly falling down on their faces because they don't maintain a database that's sufficient enough to answer all the questions. So unless you're putting in something very rudimentary, you're probably not going to get an answer, and you're still going to have to hit 8 or 0 or 1 or whatever the option is to actually speak to someone. I think for designs of websites, and if you're in a totally virtual environment, which is the environment that I'm in now, you have to remember the human element and how do you get to someone quickly. The phone trees and things that people put out there nowadays are too extensive, and it breaks my heart every time you pick up a line and you call somebody and they say, please listen carefully as our menu options may have changed. That's the cop-out for we probably change them all the time or never change them, but please listen because you just never know what we're doing. We're going to keep moving the cheese. So you have to be rather careful about that if you're in a service industry, and how do you get to someone that can resolve an issue quickly. The other things with these types of services is they do go up and down, and you have to be aware of that. Members of the organization I work for now, again, it's a virtual environment, so we rely heavily on systems. And somebody said to me the other day, they said, our uptime rate is not 0.999999998. And I said, that's great. I said, but is it functioning as designed? I said, I have a lamp in my room and I plug it in, it's up 100% of the time. But if I flip the switch and the light bulb's burned out, the power is going, but there is no light. It's not functioning as designed, it's just functioning. It's receiving power, but there's nothing being lit. So in these types of entities as well, you have to really make sure that what you're expressing is real and has meaning. So you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is as it relates to service if you're going to talk about providing service. And what does that look like? So customer service is really, in the human interaction, it's a personal thing. And you know, for me, if I'm talking with somebody on the phone and I feel like I'm getting the script, the blood pressure just starts to notch up. Like, please don't do this to me because, you know, I'm a human being and this is not you explaining why you can't. If you explain it in a really good way, maybe I'll understand it. But if you explain it in a terrible way, maybe I won't, right? And they're trying to do their job as well, and you understand that, you know, when you're talking with them. So, you know, one example was, and I think in pre-COVID, for anybody that's traveled or travels for business and those type of things, when you finish with something and you finish early and you're in another state, you want to get home early, so you'll call and say, hey, I've got this ticket, I'd love to get home early, you know, no need for me to be here another day, what does that look like? So one experience is you pick up the phone and you make that call, and on the other end, you get, that's not the type of ticket you have, I'm sorry, I can't transfer that ticket. Okay, great. I just really want to get home. Is there anything you can do to help me? No, you have the wrong ticket type. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help. The flip side of that conversation would be if somebody you picked up and you said, hey, I would like to get home, I've got this type of ticket. Sir, let me try to see what I can do. I'm looking at your ticket type here, let me see what's available. Comes back, sir, I'm looking at your ticket type, due to the status of your ticket, it doesn't appear that I'm going to be able to change it, but let me keep working on this. Thank you. Sir, look at your ticket type, I don't believe I'm going to be able to do anything. Let me ask my manager if there's anything else that I can do within our system to make this work for you to get you home back to your family. Sir, I've looked at everything. I've talked to my manager. I'm just not able to do this with your ticket type. Now I can swallow the second one and be okay with that. The first one, I'm probably just going to be like, thanks so much. I'm a platinum member and that gets me nothing. I appreciate that, right? So those two things are the same scenario, but it's just how is it handled? And that's one of those things that makes all the difference in the world, because it was an interaction where somebody wasn't as armed against you as you are upset about what just happened, or you need to have something done or fixed, right? So when you get down to customer service, and this is where it always gets a little funny for me, because we can sit here and we can talk about like, well, it's experience and it's personal and it's, you know, it's empowerment and all these wonderful things, and there's corporations like Nordstrom's that they just have wonderful customer service, and there's Ritz-Carlton who can, you know, on, and they're the leaders, and I've worked with some of those people who were in those environments and those type of things over the years. But the culture is actually what creates the customer service experience or the customer experience, and that has to be consistent. So I laugh a little bit because sometimes you'll sit there and you can hear a CEO say, I am all about customer service. Well, tell me the last time you checked someone out, you put groceries in a car, you carried luggage somewhere, 15, 25 years ago you had an interaction with somebody, you actually sold something? No, you don't. And if you're a leader within an organization, at some point you stop that as well. There are different levels of that. What you want to do is create an environment that allows for the right behavior, and you want to make employees feel that they can be themselves, that they have the right training, that there's a safe zone for them to be who they are. You want to show concern and empathy and compassion for the employee, and that comes up, it's already come up in like 3 conversations today, which I'm so excited about. You want to show concern about them as an individual, not just their output, not just what they're doing. And you want to develop trust and cooperation really at all levels throughout the organization, right? So how in the world, do you do that? What does that look like? Right? So I'm going to give a shared example of an example that was shared with me of a barista who works at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. So Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, whatever. So their fancy hotels, great. Anybody can have a fancy hotel and put an expensive bed in it and do all those wonderful things. But the difference is what's the level of service associated with that. So there's an example of a barista who worked at the Four Seasons out in Las Vegas. The gentleman went up, just getting his coffee. And by the way, the beans are the same as there as at McDonald's and Starbucks, and it doesn't really matter, right? So has a wonderful interaction with the gentleman. That's the barista, I believe his name was Noah. And great interaction. Noah talks with him, makes the coffee, makes wonderful coffee. That's great. Everybody can make wonderful coffee. Asks him what he's doing, how he's doing, and things about his life, and they have a wonderful interaction. Person tips at 100% of the value of the service that was provided to Noah. Goes back, has a similar experience, goes back again, has another experience, finally just says, okay, I'm in the business of understanding people and how they tick, and says, no, why are you here? What are you doing? What is making this work for you? So basically he just says that at the Four Seasons, they allow him to be himself. Every manager who walks by asks him, what can I do to help you do your job better? What do you need? Not his manager, every manager. Everybody in the organization shares the same philosophy. And they trust him to do a job well. Noah also shares with this individual in the same breath, I also work at Caesar's Palace, and I do the same thing. But at Caesar's Palace, the managers make sure that I'm following the rules, and they make sure that I'm just making things correctly and that I follow the process. In the second instance, they're wanting to see if Noah makes a mistake. In the first instance, they're allowing Noah to be himself. So he says, working at Caesar's Palace, keeps his head down, he just kind of does his thing, he doesn't talk a bunch, just make sure he does the correct delivery of the product as designed. So there, it's not about necessarily the service. 2 examples. With that, then, you have to ask yourself, how do managers or leaders then allow someone like Noah to be successful, and what does that look like in someone's organization? So when you start thinking about that, you have to think about, what does leadership look like in order to give that type of knowledge and allow you to develop a team that grows, that embraces customer experience, customer service, that really thrives and does well. Because if you're probably doing these things around customer service right, you probably have a pretty good cohesive team anyway that can share ideas. Has anybody, and I'm going to personally share here, that when I started college, I had no clue what I was going to be. I had no idea. Started out, I thought maybe I'm going to go into education, and then I was like, maybe I'll go into business, and then I was like, oh, my parents are accountants, maybe I'll be an accountant, I'm not real sure. Took a bunch of courses, did a bunch of stuff. I am still trying to figure it out, so if anybody can help me along the way, just let me know what that looks like. But what I did what I did realize there, and I'll tell you, working in education now, this is becoming the lost art, is that and this is speaks to leadership and kind of how you get here. We have right now a generation that is striving to succeed, but only towards one goal. And they're focused on which college to get into, how do I get into it, and I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be, X, Y, and Z. I was just recently in a summit for educators across the country, and one of the things that we talked about is a lot of students now, they're at college level, have lost the skills of human skills, personal skills, of innate leadership skills, or things that help foster that. And we're trying to figure out ways to kind of put that back in so that they realize what that looks like. And I told one of the people that runs a university, I said, I can't tell you anything that I learned in college. I got to be honest with you. I don't remember any of it. So don't quiz me. But I did learn how to think for myself. I did learn how to think. And it was all up to me. No parent was holding my hand. I was dropped off at the door and said, hey, just don't mess it up. So you learn how to learn, and you learn how to survive, and you learn about environments and people and what you've got to do to get things done. So that's a little bit of a preface to say, I remember the first time I took keys to a store for Target Corporation, and I was fresh out of college, and I'm sitting there, and I thought to myself, as every other manager left for the day, oh my goodness, I am in charge of, a $75 million revenue generating thing that's got probably 75 or 100 souls in it right now, and is going to generate, will generate profit. It's got, I don't know how many hundreds of $1 million, or how much inventory was in it at the time. But I was never going, they gave the key to me. And I was like, oh no, like catches on fire, something happened, like it's all me. I'm gonna, there's nobody to look over and go, hey, can you help me out with this? So, in most of our corporate entities nowadays, and even businesses, you go into a job and you're picked because you've learned something, or you know how to do something. When you become a leader in an organization, the only reason you're made a leader is because you're good at that one thing that you were doing. Nobody's teaching you how to be a leader, right? Kind of ironic. So the person that is good at, let's just say stocking shelves or whatever the case may be, then becomes the person that's now in charge of other people stocking shelves. But you haven't taught them anything along the way other than they know how to stock shelves really well, right? So one of the key takeaways is when you get to that leadership role, you're now taking care of those in your charge. And just like not everybody is a natural born leader. There's skill sets and you can teach it. Absolutely, you can teach somebody to become a leader. It doesn't mean they're going to be good at it, and it doesn't mean that they want to do it, right? So you have to take that into account, that not everybody will fit that bill, and not everybody has to, just like not everybody has to go to college anymore to be successful. So if you have someone that's in your charge, you really need to make sure that you work with them. And what's the first thing that somebody does who is really good at doing something? When the ship starts to break a little bit and something isn't going right, the person who knows how to do it really well says, just get out of the way, let me do it for you. And like, I can do that, okay. You didn't teach anybody anything. So you have to be very careful with that. And a part of the example with Noah is he gets to be himself. And does Noah screw up? Absolutely, Noah screws up. So you have to allow that to occur, right? the other thing that happens when you get into those roles is you start to become very focused on just output. And output is great, but if you're in business, you will soon understand that winning the day will never win the war, and I'll keep saying that over and over again. It's not even a marathon. It goes well beyond a marathon, but most people think it's a sprint. So that's one of those things that you need to be aware of. Give people the rope to make mistakes, allow them to happen, allow individuals to learn. And really, when you get to that level in an organization, when you're leading and developing teams, you know, you give them all the glory and you take all the responsibility when it falls apart. And you have to be realistic in expectations as you work through building this group together. I recently took over a team who had a previous manager who created for them a sales goal that was just incredibly difficult. And when I would talk with people about it, they looked at me and you could just see the terror in their eyes, you know, because in this day and age, you know, sales and merchandising opportunities, most of the time if you don't make a goal, you're just, see you later, you know, we'll get the next one in. It's just it's a grinder, it's a mill. You bring somebody, bring the next one in. So I had looked at the goal, and I had been in the business a while and understand what things look like. So the first meeting we were together, I said, first off, we're throw that in the trash. The goal doesn't exist. We'll never make it. It's unrealistic. Don't do it. We came back together, and I actually just asked them. I already knew what I wanted. I knew what I thought the goal would be, and what those things would look like. But I said, go tell me what you can do. Go back to your territories if it's a national thing. And I said, go to your territories and tell me what you can do. Tell me what that looks like. Break it out into, you know, new business, renewals, those type of things. Let me know each segment. So they came back with their numbers. It wasn't too far off from what I had originally thought it would be, and we went with their number. So, you know, the position I'm in, I've got to now go to a CEO and say, you know that you're $20 million less than what you thought you were going to get. It's not going to happen.
It wouldn't happen anyhow.
Right. It wouldn't happen anyhow. Yeah, it was a dream, right?
Yeah.
So you got to base your situation in the reality of what's happening, no matter how hard it is, no matter how hard the conversation is. And that gave, then, you know, they flipped the switch. That was the thing. I went from a group that was staring at me with like, how am I supposed to do, you know, I don't have enough tools in my tool bag to make this happen, to a group that was actually inspired to go and do it and exceed the number that was agreed to. So that's just an example of that. But that kind of all goes back to that point of, you know, think about where the team is at and the ability to provide. And you can drill it right on all the way down to Noah. And I tell teams all the time, I don't go out and do this stuff that you all do. I am here to help you, to see what the roadblocks are, to remove the roadblocks, to help get you what you need, because, you know, I'm not the CEO, but just in that example, I don't go out there and do it every single day. I'm not standing in front of someone all the time. So you have to make sure that you understand the road that they're walking in. So that speaks a lot to the environment. You want to be concerned about the human being, not just the output. Suffering side effects from obstacles. From obsolete business theories. This is something else that I think is very true in our situation today in the world. I think that, you know, during the 80s and 90s, we kind of moved away from what amounted to, you know, the Cold War. We were under the threat of hiding under desks and all this good stuff. I kind of grew up in this era through adolescence. And things were pretty good. You know, we had some recessions. The economy seemed pretty good. Everything was, you know, in pretty good shape. So I think that businesses, in a sense, some of them got very lazy as it relates to customer service, how they did business, and what things look like. Because, you know what, if you didn't buy it, somebody else will. We'll get somebody else, right? And then a few things happened that kind of bursts the bubble on a lot of thoughts, you know, in the economy in general. And one of them being the housing market crisis. Huge phenomenon that changed the world. Developed a lot of distrust for a lot of different entities. The other one that comes to mind, obviously, is COVID. That changed retail forever, and that impact will continue to happen over the next several years. But what it proved is if you think you're settled, if you think everything's normal, things will change, and that is a constant. So you always have to be aware of that. And the times that we're in right now, they're not necessarily turbulent. We're not, you know, crawling under our desk or anything, but there's a lot of economic uncertainty, and I think that we have to be aware of what that looks like as well. And you have to realize there was a couple of things that came out of the period of the late 70s through the 80s and 90s that have now kind of stuck within our culture. One is the concept of just maximizing shareholder value. So think about that. If you're maximizing the shareholder value, that's like saying you're going to invest if you had a Major League Baseball team, you're going to invest all your money in who? The fans? Right? That equates to the fans instead of investing it in the team. Right? So I think that concept needs to be thought about. It was just a theory that actually has just now been embedded. So I think that there's probably a change there. The other thing is that companies, I think, came to do, which really shocked the value of people in an organization, which, you know, obviously impacts your customer service and your customer experiences. The first thing that a lot of major corporations went to when they went in troubled times was just layoff. So if you want to send a shockwave through your organization, the fastest thing you can do, use the words hiring freeze or layoff, and I guarantee you everyone will just lose their minds.
And their abilities.
And their abilities, absolutely.
Paralyzing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the worst things that you can do. You know, if you've been in business long enough, you probably heard the term burn the furniture, right? You know, is it bad enough that we're going to start burning furniture? A lot of the good corporations and entities that went through COVID, that went through these troubling times, the last thing they did was to cut the employee. And they have a very respectful base. They have people that stay with them forever. And there's a few in town that did that and did that very well here. So the thing is, when you do that, you know, unfortunately, the person that's being let go is almost set free from an environment that might be toxic. The person who actually suffers the most is the one that stays, because they don't know what's happening next. So one of the other things to think about, you know, if you own a business or in business, every time you send out a piece of communication, every time you tell an employee something of magnitude, you are shaking the core of what you do and how they do things. Every piece of communication is an event to an employee. And it can be easily misinterpreted, it can be interpreted the right way, but it has to be handled correctly. So think about that, because again, if you're leading an organization, you're not standing in front of the customer. The person that you just sent a shockwave of fear through is the one who's having the interaction. And they'll be more than happy to share that with the person that they're probably talking to. So all of these events, everything that I'm talking about gets to the base, the person that's actually standing in front of. And you always have to be aware of how you're treating them and what does that look like. Okay, so sometimes when you're leading an organization or you're leading people, you're ahead of the game and sometimes you're behind. And that's just normal. And I think one of the future speaks of where we'll be headed as it relates to organizations in general is around gaming theory. Has anybody heard of gaming theory yet? Okay, so a finite game, and I'll just explain it a little bit, is a game like baseball. Certain amount of innings, certain amount of players, there's rules, right? The infinite game, players change, the rules can change, and the objective of the game is to just keep playing and going. It actually never, ever ends, right? Business is an infinite game. Can anybody name a business that's been on the earth since creation and has existed? Can anybody tell me a business that will exist after everyone in this room has passed? Not ever going to happen. What you would want to be focused on in this situation is how are you just outlasting someone who's next to you in the same type of environment, right? What makes businesses shut down, and you can take it all the way down to know what the service of being a barista is, how many resources do you have and how much longer can you survive in the environment than the person who's right next to you. Anybody heard of Sears? Kmart? Yep.
Eastman Kodak.
Yeah, Eastman Kodak. I mean, you can name the laundry list a mile long, right? So what you need to do, in the environment that we're in now, especially with the way things, have changed, is start to think more to the future and what does that look like. So that road that we talked about earlier, what does that look like? And I immediately wrote down, after you mentioned that, I went right and I wrote, this is what I wrote. I slid it right in front of my why. You have to know your why. Why do you exist? Why are you here? What are you doing? And you can make a wonderful, anybody ever heard of TiVo? This is going back a little bit. TiVo was so TiVo was an excellent product. It recorded shows, blah, blah, blah. Anybody heard? I asked TiVo and nobody's like, what are you talking about, right? Wonderful product. It doesn't exist. So you have to know what the why is. Now, when you think about your why in relation to the person next to you, you do have to think about that road and your width. Because if you try to be the person who's next to you, I guarantee you will go out. You won't be around much longer. Because you're just looking to your right and to your left and seeing what they're doing. You have to think more forward about where you're headed and what does that look like. And that goes right back to Noah, because if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're about, Noah will never know what it's about and what you want to succeed at and what you think you're good at. So another shared experience that was an individual who spoke at two summits, one for Apple and one for Microsoft. And, I could probably poll the room right now. You're probably either a Mac person or you're a Microsoft user, whichever the case may be, whichever computer you're like. But he got to speak to both of them, and he said one of the things that was very interesting, and I'm not disparaging either of these corporations, but he said one of the things that was interesting about it was that all the presentations by the top executives at Microsoft were focused on product and competition and what was Apple doing and what were other competitors doing in the field. He said at Apple, 100% of the conversations and presentations were what their computers could do to advance learning and what they were going to do for kids. And they didn't speak a word about the competition. Two very different philosophies. So one of those was thinking in a line like this around what the competition was doing and looking back and forth to see what features, what's the feature set, what am I doing, who's already doing it, what does it look like in the marketplace. The other one was saying, great, I'm looking to see what I'm going to do to advance the future and advance people and keep things moving. So that's that scenario of the environment. Same person gets into the car of, I think it was like employee number 12 at Apple into a taxi. They're sharing a taxi. Microsoft had given this person one of their new devices, and it was a wonderful device, very functional, lovely, and all this good stuff. The gentleman decides to stir the pot with the guy from Apple and says, listen, you know, I spoke at a summit for Microsoft, and, you know, when I left, they gave me this wonderful device, and it was just amazing, all the functionality, blah, blah, blah. And expecting well, what did it do? What did it look like? Tell me more about it. Why did you enjoy it? What did it feel like? The gentleman from Apple simply said, when he said, it was wonderful, blah, 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 I love the device, he looks at the individual who brought it up and said, I have no doubt. That's the winning and losing. That's the thank you for that piece of information, but it doesn't concern me because I'm more concerned about the great things that we're going to do related to a certain few areas. And that's all I care about. That's my lane.
Yeah.
I'm not constantly peering over my shoulder at the next thing that's happening. So when you have that, and you kind of, and you know, I know I'm talking about customer service, and I'm taking you on this journey through leadership and what do things look like. Is it really? It comes to that pinnacle of knowing who you are and what you're good at, and expressing that in a way that creates passion amongst everybody who works, no matter where they work, right, in an organization. Sometimes you can't do that at every level in the organization because you have leadership that maybe doesn't know the why, doesn't know the what, doesn't even know what road they're on. They might be on a county lane, they might be on a super highway, you're never quite sure what's happening. But you can do that with the people that you work for. And I would say that as a leader, your job is to shield them from the nonsense that is happening around you if you believe it to be nonsense. And your other job as a leader, which when we were talking earlier, is to make that challenge. These are not my notes, this is from the previous session with Matt, but is to challenge those things that are not status quo. And we talked about that just a little bit. But do it in the right amounts so that you maybe can make that change. Sometimes you make the change by chewing the elephant one small bite at a time. I call it taking the teaspoon on the mountain. I'm like, okay, we got that teaspoon out. Okay, one more to go. 10 years later, I'm going to be still working on this mountain. But you work through it. And I think as you know, as leaders, when you get really good results, is remembering that your team is what delivers it for you, that you don't pull the rope yourself. You have to understand that. You have to be aware of it. But we forget. Leadership is a exercise that has to be done over and over and over again, or you kind of forget how to do it. And you have to be consistent in what it is that you provide. And I'll be the first to admit, sometimes I forget. I don't work the muscle really well. I'm like, oh, yeah, you get kind of lazy. You're like, okay, everybody's doing their thing. It's good. You know, just let it go. But what slaps you in the face is when you have people that are really good who all of a sudden become frustrated. And I have, you know, several people that I've had the pleasure of working with in my career that, I mean, I will take them anywhere I go. Like, I will poach them, I will steal them, we will go wherever we are going to go, and you will come with me. Because to me, they're just that good, right? But I do have times when I actually had one person who is, you know, it would be my arm, said, I'm not sure what the vision of the organization is anymore. And I had to ask the immediate question was, do you not believe in the organization or do you not believe in me? And they said, I'm not sure. And it sent a shockwave right through my body because I was like, wow, I have failed here. Like there is a problem. So we immediately went to the why and the question of what was bothering them and what did it look like. I didn't talk about what they were producing. I didn't talk about how they were doing. I didn't talk about numbers. I said, how are you feeling right now? What does that look like? What made you... So they expressed it, and then I re-expressed, well, we need to get through that, and we need to work on that first. So whatever time we have to dedicate to understanding the empathy and the compassion and what you're tied to, then we need to talk about that. because none of this works if you're not in it with me. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you're probably gonna fail the organization. You're gonna fail ultimately the person that you're trying to serve. Why we're here today. So, that's something I'm actually working through right now with that person. And I had a status with them the other day, and I said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I understand where we're at, and I'm doing what I need to do, but I'm still working through it." And I said, "Well, okay, I can live with that. So let's keep working through it." So we will continue to talk about that, and you stay close to that person or persons or whatever it may be. But that's an indicator too that probably someone else in that downline feels the same way or is confused. So you have to be aware of that. See, I think you're always looking for those signs, and what does that look like?
There's a ripple effect through the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. Go say hiring freeze and see what it does for you, right? There's words that people don't think about, and I even expressed that in leadership because we recently went through something that was similar, and I said, be careful of the words you use. And even if you don't use those words, people will interpret it because they think that that's what it is, or they think that's what it might be.
Yeah.
And the example was, as we were in a meeting with somebody who was a communications person who was going to communicate out what was happening. And the CEO said what they were going to say, and the communication person was, okay, well, how would you like to communicate out the hiring freeze, since we're going into a hiring freeze? And I just busted out laughing. And I said, see what you just did? I said, so pull yourselves back in. I said, think about it. Every piece of communication you send out is very important. Will be interpreted, will be construed, and will be looked at. Okay. So that's a little bit on the environment and what does that look like. I think within business and leading teams, everything comes back down to the people you've got. And by the way, there's a lot of churn out there, and people are burning through people and like, get them in, get them out. They're not the right fit, right player on the bus, right person, right place, right time. And these are all things I get through. I think it's there will be people that are not suited for what you've asked them to do. But I also think that, you need to make sure that you're looking at what their skill sets are and who they are and what do they bring to the table. Nobody joins an organization with an effort to fail, right? So what does that look like? Keep that in the back of your mind. Sometimes the person may not be the right fit for what is in front of them, or may not possess that skill set, but maybe there is something else in the organization that they are a super fit for, something else. And maybe the environment is bad. I've had people come to work for me that other people were like, no, you don't want them, they're awful, but I'm like, no, they're not, really. I think they've got the skill set. I think we just, it's just where are we putting them and what does that look like? So, be aware of that as you move through the hiring process. Are you constantly looking to advance your products and services, and what's your why and what's your lane and what does that look like? And are you staying true to it, or do you get your head turned really quickly? The other thing about business too is, and I think anybody who's worked in business is, how do you measure success in business? Can anybody tell me? How do you measure success year to year in business? What's your method for doing
How
that?
well you sleep.
How what?
How well you sleep.
How well you sleep? That would be. I would love to know what that looks like. But I think that's a good one. Anything else? So is it profit margin? Is it revenue? Is it ROI? Is it gross margin? Gross percent? Gross. How do you measure that, right? Does anybody have any one measurement that they've ever used that says I'm number one in this? And if I'm number one in this, then I have beaten everyone else to a pulp.
I think that about my team, no matter what. But, I think for me and my team, it's really about, our success is really based on what our goal was to start with, right? Mm-hmm. So if our goal was to install 200 systems, and we installed 200 systems, then we were successful, right?
Okay.
If we installed 100 systems, we weren't successful, right? If we installed 300 systems, then we were very successful, right? I think that's kind of the way I think about it is, because again, right, in my role, I'm not held accountable for the bottom line. I have a budget, but I'm not, and yes, profitability is in there, right? Keeping my expenses down and things like that is all part of the job,
Right.
but the goal, if the goal is the goal, then that's how we measure our success.
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. I think and we all have our goals. I have a sales goal, I have a expense reduction goal, and all these good things, and we all go to meet them. If you look across business as a whole, there's nothing that actually holds water. Because you can say, well, I was number one in customer service. Well, based on what year, based on how many people, based on what length of time. I had a return on investment of X. Oh. And that's what makes it an infinite game. If I don't agree to the same criteria you have for success, then we're not playing the same game. So, in this effort, there is no one goal that works. It's sustainability, it's longevity. There's a reason you hear about mergers and acquisitions. It's because somebody pushed their chips in and said, I've done everything I can do and I don't have anything left. So the idea is to keep playing as long as you can. In that, you need to think about a few things. How are you advancing your products and services? Are you offering new and better solutions? Are you becoming static in what you're doing? Are you thinking about who you're serving and what does it look like? And oh, by the way, who you serve today will absolutely not be who you serve tomorrow or 10 years from now, and in the same capacity. We all fumbled with those Legos for a reason, because we didn't necessarily play with Legos as a kid, but everybody now knows how to play with Legos. They're building $1 million sets. They understand what they are. That will come into play into how someone thinks in the future, I absolutely guarantee it. Right? Be honest about what you're good at and what you're not good at. Don't be afraid to send somebody down the street when you don't know what you're doing. Don't try to take something on that you absolutely don't understand or is not in your lane of experience. Keep those things in mind. Customer service is really about building relationships. You have to sacrifice your interest for that of the customer. If there's no room for you in the conversation when you're talking with someone on the phone about a problem you're having, if you're just getting the script, then there's no room in the conversation for the customer. It's just about what has been put forward as a policy with no empathy. It's just written words. Think about how you make somebody feel in the transaction. The unfortunate part about working in retail for so long is I've experienced so many good and bad interactions with people that when I talk with other people that are in the service industry, I can ratchet up very quickly, which is a very sad thing because I know everything that they're telling me. But I'm always pleasantly surprised when I get with someone who actually is just speaking with me as a human being and not as a policy. Or telling me that I signed an agreement, it says in the agreement that I'm going to do this or they're going to do that.
Not talking out of their heart as opposed to talking out of their tail.
Yeah. That's a nice way of saying it. Yes.
Yeah. In other words, not thinking, how's this going to bite me?
Well, right. And I think the key word there is thinking. So it's just thinking about the situation, thinking about the person that you're talking about. I think you got to care about who you serve and why you serve them. And again, that's understanding who you are, the who, what, where, and why of everything that you do. I think you have to make an effort even if it fails. Sometimes, we go back to the first definition of if I get what I want, I'm happy. If I don't get what I want, I'm really unhappy. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but you should be able to have them walk away and have them not feel like they want to go and, drive the car in a ditch or yell at somebody or, have their spouse get the brunt of it, whatever the case may be. The job is to try to really show empathy, compassion, and concern. And again, when you think about that too, we've talked a lot about kind of leadership and up and down and what does it look like, you know, within an organization, there's customers, like, you know, so everybody that it works for me and with me is a customer of what I provide, right? So I can't say go do this without me doing it myself, right? So everybody in the chain has to do that. Be an honest broker. For heaven's sakes, just try to be honest in the situations that you're in. I think one of the industries that has the hardest time with this right now is the housing market. They totally were not honest brokers about what was happening in the world, what was happening in their industry. So, you know, be that, and these are things that, I gotta be honest with you, are almost foreign in some of our businesses today. You know, when you run across the example where someone treats you with kindness and respect and adds a 3-layer add-on, right? You're almost blown away. You're like, oh my goodness, this is really amazing. But it's really not that hard to do, to be quite honest. It just takes time, and it takes somebody having an interest in what it looks like. So consistency matters, and I talked about kind of using the leadership skills and making sure that you know, keep those moving, keep that exercise process up. So I'll be the first one, like one day at the gym, you get what you got up here, right? So you're not going to see any results. If you go to the gym 2 times a week, 30 minutes every time you go, little by little, you start to see something. So consistency matters. What you want to do is keep it moving, and be it conversations with your team, management of walking around, management of being engaged with your team, management of asking them how they're doing. That's what matters. A lot of little acts of leadership add up to big acts of leadership. They will start to value, they will gain respect, just as your customers will too. You know, a couple of things that we do kind of consistently with products and services that we sell. When we go in to meet with somebody, we never lead with what we're selling. I say, tell me what your problem is. Tell me what you've got going on. Tell me what you need. Tell me how I can serve you. And if I don't do it, I'm going to tell you exactly who to go to, who does it really good in the industry, and I'm going to guide you right to them. If I do it, then I'm going to show you what I do, and I'm going to hope that you like it, and I'm going to hope that you want to buy it. And if you don't want to buy it from me, I hope you find the right person that fits whatever environment you're in, and I will wish you the best of luck. But I'm not going to press on you, and I'm not going to drive you crazy about it. I'm just going to try to meet you where you're at. It's the same thing with the teams. What do you got going on? What does it look like? How can we get there together? And then what you also start to find out when you do this stuff, these little acts, people kind of get excited. Then they start coming up with things that you never even thought of. And you're going, oh my goodness, okay, well, okay, maybe we, and does that fit into our lane? You always got to go back to who you are, but does that fit into who we are? What does that look like? What did you hear? What was that example? What are you thinking about? And then you start to do things that you never even dreamed that you can do. And in the last session, we were talking a little bit about, you know, you start something and you think you know where you're going. You think, I think Leanne was talking about it. You talk about, you know, you might have been called to do something, and you think you know what you're doing, and you're going to go there, and you're going to make this happen. And then the wheels spin off, and you're like, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to keep trying. And you keep banging your head on the desk, and you keep thinking something's going to happen. So, and I mentioned in the last one, I've never started on a journey of where I thought I was going to go that ended where I thought I was going to be. It never has ever worked that way. I started as a kid who entered college. Poor Leanne knew me when I was a kid in college. No idea. My wife graduated before me. She was faster than I was getting through it. She came in after me. I was still like, I'm not really sure what I want to do. And I left school and I started as an hourly. I had no clue what I was doing. I had this degree. It felt kind of worthless. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I bounced around and did all these other things. That was not the plan. I didn't start that way. But I've enjoyed the journey 100%. I've enjoyed everybody that I've met, and I've enjoyed everything that I've had the advantage and bounty in my life to do. And I think you have to be thankful for that. And I think a lot of the times the people that you're working with and the people that you're helping on that journey and that path, wherever it may lead, that's your gift back. That's what you're here to help them with. And you're going to watch them fail, and you're going to watch them succeed, and you're going to help them get where they're going. So having that interest and that compassion and that interest, is a lot of what it's about. So Jeff talked about it. I talked about it here. I talked about it a little bit. I think, we can all write down the same 4 words as we walk out of these sessions. Probably, I don't know what everybody else is saying. But that's what I would share with you today, and I appreciate you listening to me babble on for an hour.
Babylon. That's a nice
Appreciate that. That's all right. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I guess we have like a minute left or something. Any questions or thoughts?
Very well done, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. If you enjoyed my speech, my name is Kevin Locke. If you hated my speech, it's
Jeff
Leanne.
Dixon.